about Holden. But we've got one more thing from Mark here, and this comes at the 125 mark. This is so it's very much near the end of the question and answer. And here he's talking about the Collateral Murder video.
Mean because it's classified, it can be revealed as a matter of law. And there are harms that can come. They're set by executive order. They're vague as to figure out what it means when you disclose secret information, top secret information, sensitive compartmented information. And with the WikiLeaks Manning disclosures, there's tons of information that was newsworthy and you can say in the public interest for sure. I mean, the Apache helicopter incident, which if Manning had come to me and shown me that, I would have absolutely been able, I believe, to help get that information legally, properly to the right authorities to be looked into as to whether or not anything illegal had transpired in that incident. This was an incident when Reuters reporter was unfortunately, sadly killed by one of our helicopter crews. It was investigated. It was looked at. You can read the 15-6 Army report online. It was determined not to be a war crime. And having worked on war crimes cases, I can understand as a matter of law why it wasn't. Doesn't mean it was palatable. It was very insensitive when you heard what the helicopter pilots were saying. They didn't know who they were shooting at. They thought they were shooting at rescuers of enemy. And you can, under laws of war, kill the rescuers of the enemy because they're looked at as being the enemy. So it's tough. It's not this easy equation of, oh, is it in the public interest? We should reveal it when it's classified information.
Okay, so we're done.
I'd like to read to you from the International Red Cross database on customary humanitarian law. Humanitarian law is the laws of war. Why you would call the laws of killing people humanitarian law, I don't know. The Red Cross is considered the expert on interpreting this. Here's some of their database, the section on medical personnel. And I know he said rescuers, not medical personnel, but we're talking about medical personnel. According to the Geneva Convention, medical teams are not part of the armed conflict. They are marked with distinctive identification signs. They do not carry arms. They do not cause injury, and it is forbidden to harm them. It is prohibited to shoot a paramedic in the battlefield or to take him prisoner. I'm sure his use of the word rescuer and not medical personnel, he thinks, is doing a lot of work here, but this is why double tap drone strikes are illegal under international law. You cannot murder paramedics. His statement about international humanitarian law is flat out false. Second of all, I mean, is collateral murder a war crime or not? I'm of the opinion that it is. The former United Nations Special Rapporteur on torture in his book on Assange, does an analysis of what's depicted and concludes it is a war crime. However, I have heard other people who are pro-Manning, pro-Assange, put the opinion out there that it's not a war crime under the rules of law, but it is just the way war is. That's why war is bad, and that's why this video should be in the public so we can have an informed discussion about whether or not we want to engage in war in Iraq or not, if it means carrying out acts like this. And if you're going to make the point that stuff can only be released if the system itself finds it breaks their rules, then you can never have a discussion publicly about whether or not we, the people, want our government to engage in this type of conduct. And this is the question that I asked of them. And it's so offensive to me what he said, because if he's correct, and I don't think he is, that there was no war crime in collateral murder, that's all the more reason why it should be published, because then that should help inform the public about whether or not we should be involved in war. If war means the lawful murder of Reuters journalists and medics and helpers, then we as a public have a right to decide, should we be doing that? And my answer would be no, we should not be.
Yeah, and he mentions the 15-6 investigation. Well, that means it's the Pentagon investigating its own self, and it's their agency. And we already know from some of the more high profile incidents in the last couple of years, especially the one that marked the end of our engagement and occupation of Afghanistan. They looked into that aid worker who was assassinated extrajudicially. They killed him, and then they decided that's not a war crime. But there was no justification at all for launching that attack. There's actually been New York Times reporting on units in the military that have been killing people who should not be targeted. And there have been individuals who have tried to like kick this up the chain of command to get it dealt with, and they get crushed because those people don't want to do anything to follow up on those allegations because it'll reflect poorly on those people, those military officers. So no, this again, I have to keep using this word fantasy, this fantasy that you are going to get Chelsea Manning in a room and she's going to talk to these people, or you're going to get into a meeting and they're going to look at this video and scrutinize it, and then they're going to hold themselves accountable so they don't do this again. That's just not how power works. It's not how these institutions work. They don't correct themselves unless they are exposed. At the very least, they don't correct themselves unless they're exposed to some kind of shame. Like people see the video and there's outrage, and then now they have to respond to it because they're being questioned by members of the press. But even that doesn't really, because that happened with the killing in Kabul of that aid worker, and still, even with all that outrage, it didn't result in them admitting that something wrong was done, that it was a war crime. And so, but I will say also that Chelsea Manning picked rules of engagement files to release to WikiLeaks from Iraq that were accompanying the Collateral Murder video, and she gave them to WikiLeaks, and they were posted, and they were there so that people could read through them and put them side by side next to the video and see where the rules of engagement were not followed in the video. So I do think that like this idea that it is just, oh, it's settled that nothing was done, there was no war crime, even by the laws of war. I don't buy that argument. Yeah.
It's not a settled matter when you have the United Nations Special Rapporteur on torture saying this, who now is at the Red Cross, who has the responsibility for interpreting the laws of war, using his own expertise, saying this was clearly a war crime. And once again, Chelsea Manning wanted to reveal the nature of 21st century war. WikiLeaks wanted to reveal the nature of war. It's not about whether or not these one group of people in this one circumstance followed the rules, right? It's a bigger question about the nature of war itself and about our foreign policy, which there is no official channel for exposing for, right? If the president goes to war and Congress authorizes it, there's no, let me tell the inspector general, did you know war kills people? Oh, okay, we're going to cancel the war now, right? The only thing you have to do is to go to the public and bring them these images and these stories of the battlefield and explain to them what is being done in their name.